Safety Commission of Blue Lake to order. This is Monday, May 5th, 2025 at 7 p.m. in the Skinner Store Community Center. And first order of business is establish a quorum of the commission.
Yes. Chairperson Jones,
Here.
Commissioner Ricka,
Here.
Commissioner Shang,
Here.
Commissioner Hales, Commissioner Glenn.
Okay, this is exciting. We have a full commission. We haven't had one in quite a while, so that's good. We have an agenda to look at. Is there anyone, first of all, from the commission that would like to move anything around on the agenda?
Well, I would like to add an agenda item. And Marty is back, and I would like to discuss her efforts to help get the firework thing going down. And she has some words for us, and I have some ideas how the commission can help her on this effort that she has started and is following through on.
Mandy, can we add something to the agenda since it's posting? I know it used to be it had to be an emergency
Right. Yeah, I was trying
situation
to see if
where
there
it could
be.
fit in. I was too.
I think you should probably take that under future agenda items, and then the announcements. Maybe Marty could talk about the information. Then you guys could discuss as a commission what your next steps could be
Okay.
for your next meeting or.
Just in public comments?
Yeah,
And she could also bring it up at public comment.
absolutely.
She
okay,
Yeah,
wanted
you just
to
can't
also.
really, because
that's
it's
what she
not
was
on here. You
planning
can't
on
really
doing.
have a
Okay.
discussion.
Okay, all right, yeah, we really can't add something to the agenda since the posting unless there's an emergency reason for it.
Okay.
Yeah, so having said that, I'm going to open up to public. Is there anyone that would like to move anything around in the agenda that are here for a specific item? All right, back to the commission for a motion to approve the agenda and second.
I move to approve the agenda. Second.
Motion made by Alex Ricka, seconded by Ted Hales to approve the agenda as delivered. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We have an agenda. Okay, now we have the approval of the minutes of April 7th, 2025. I'll start with commissioners. Is there anyone here that would like to change anything from the minutes or to add anything?
I
or-
read them. They seem fine to me.
Yeah. I mean, really minutes, the important thing is your motions, your seconds, and your votes. That really is what counts there.
We've been pretty free of those recently.
Commissioner Lynn Glenn, since you weren't here, you can still vote for the minutes, but that's completely up to you since you weren't here.
Okay, you don't need me, I don't think for the quorum, so I'll abstain since I wasn't here.
Yeah, in the need of a quorum, perhaps we would need you to do that. All right, opening it up to public. Is there anyone in the public that would like to make a comment about, this is about the minutes right now. Okay, nothing on the minutes. Let's come back. We need a motion and a second to approve the minutes of April 7th, 2025.
I'll move to approve the minutes.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion made by Commissioner Alex Ricka, seconded by
So,
Shang.
Commissioner
Done.
Chang.
Yeah.
And any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, it passes the approval of the minutes of April 7th, 2025. Now we're on public input. The public is invited to present petitions, make announcements, or provide other information to the commission that is relevant to the scope of authority of the City of Blue Lake that is not on the agenda. The commission may provide up to 15 minutes for this public input session. To assure that each individual presentation is heard, the commission may uniformly impose time limitations of 3 minutes to each individual presentation. The public will be given the opportunity to address items that are on the agenda at the time the commission takes up each specific agenda item. Is there anyone here for public input? This would be a good time. Marty, go ahead.
Marty Granger, and I'm reporting back that the school board rejected the idea of passing out those flyers to the children. And their reasons were that the words were kind of harsh, like it was chimes instead of crime. And they thought, crime, it's kind of an intense word. And celebrate instead of, let's see, violate. Yeah, so these are kind of strong words. So I kind of see their point. So I've made some changes and I softened it a little bit. So now it says, as it did before, bells instead of bangs, and then chimes instead of crime, I put in fines. You get fined if it's okay. And then celebrate instead of, what did I say? Celebrate instead of,
Violate? No. What did you
um,
say?
well, anyway, I
Anyway, you got
changed
it
it.
now.
Oh, violate.
It was
I changed it to agitate, which is a little milder. So, and then harmonize instead of traumatize is the same, but I took out jingle instead of kindle, which didn't make much sense to people anyway. And then that allowed room for the statement underneath, the community church bells will ring at 9 p.m. And I think makes more sense because before people didn't know that so it ties it together. So, Adeline, I believe you said you were going to go to the school board meeting.
Yeah, I can go with that.
And I'm going out of town, so I won't even be here, but it's the 13th.
I think it's
Yeah.
the 15th. I
Is
think
it
it's
the
the
15th?
third, it's the third Thursday.
You're right,
It's the
15th. That's right.
15th.
That's right.
Do you know the time? I don't know.
No, I
I'll
don't.
find out because I'll get it on the agenda for that night. I'll
Okay.
talk to Deanna.
So
get it
if
on
they
the agenda.
should approve it, then the next morning, early in the morning, somebody needs to take the copy that I'm going to give you down to Paradise K and have them make the 300 copies, 150 of one side and 150 of the other side, which we'll do in December. And then they need to get to the school, like maybe Friday, because there's only a couple of weeks left and they have to fit this in. And also, when you do take them, and I'll reimburse the person, whoever pays the $30. When you do take it to the school, be sure to have this little tag in there with Erin McClure's phone number that they can call for her to bring the horse down so she can explain it to the kids about what these loud bangs do to the animals. So I'll leave this with you.
I'll try. That's all I can do.
Yeah.
You know, they may reject it again.
Yeah.
My problem is I might be out of town on 4th of July.
Well, that's
And I'm the
okay.
person that would be
Get
ringing the
this-
bell at the Catholic Church, but I have the key and I think I know some Catholics that might be able to do it. So anyway,
All right.
they don't have to be Catholics.
Thank you, Maureen.
Thank you, Marty.
Julie Christie, it's nice to see everybody in person. I see a lot of commissioners and I really appreciate all you guys being here for us. It's great to see Mandy at Murphy's last night. It sucks that we're always so busy and everybody can't really see each other sometimes outside of busy lives. So appreciate everybody coming in the audience tonight as well. And Marty, were you going for the fireworks thing? Okay. I could get a picture real quick before I leave and help circulate too. So, just going back to circulation and everything, your guys' last public safety meeting, I actually thought it was canceled because there was never an agenda that was posted, on the website. I've been advised in the past to refresh, the website and go to the main calendar, and I did do that, but so a lot of us thought it was canceled, and so I have to give a big shout out to Justin. Thank you so much for recording all the time. Wherever we can keep going with the asset of our recording is a gem. Because as we get new commissioners, they're able to get a timeline. As our public's catching up on items, we're able to create a timeline. So within our recordings, it would be really cool to see that we have them itemized. So like if somebody wants to see the recording tonight, other municipalities like the supervisors will do this where there'll be a timestamp and an item connected to that timestamp. It will shorten up time for the public and commissioners that they can then go to that timestamp and not have to scroll through the whole meeting to find a certain item. And I don't know if the city can facilitate a like universal laptop that the commissioners can then use to potentially provide Zoom. Every time we are having construction and busy lives, that's really appreciated. I do appreciate Justin's rolling with the Discord tonight. I'm gonna probably have to dip out and use that option. And, but it's always great to, we're always talking about environmental impact and the economy right now. So I've just been an advocate for years that my two big things for our city is public safety and our infrastructure. So as we move forward, I'd really like to see that we have more involvement with our council because the council represents the public. We are supposed to go to them and to also provide yourselves as commissioners to our constituents in the community. So a survey would be really kind of cool. I think we could develop maybe within your commission to prioritize maybe some sections with the consent of the council. You could send a recommendation that the Public Safety Commission would like to do a survey amongst our community. If we want to start doing, like my neighborhood, we're next to Bob Chapman and where his wife is in Dot Campbell. And so they're always very active advocates of our community unit. And so if we could start promoting that a little bit more, I think that would be great. And as you guys could be the liaison to maybe get that out to our public, maybe more of a survey of stuff that people are more concerned about. We can work on it. I don't want to blah 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 blah. You guys are being very patient with my time limit. But that would be my priority right now is reaching out to the public with their concerns on public safety in a way that it can format and come back to you guys for discussion, then perhaps give recommendation to your council for further action that would then come back to our commission. So thank you very much. And I am gonna dip out, but yes, I appreciate all of you and
Jean Lynch?
but I
Thoughts I want to bring up tonight too, and I know it's supposed to be one item, but it kind of all correlates together. When I was on council, Adeline brought forward the civility clause, and we all agreed to be civil to each other. I would like to see that brought to the safety committee in regards to the treatment of our council that we have now. I would like to see some civility from a couple of members that are criticizing the council. I think it's disingenuous. It's not needed for a new council to listen to people that are supposed to be advising the council on way to handle things and be helpful, to have members of the group criticize the council. And given that the state is coming after us for our housing element, I think at this time it's crucially important that the council has support. And I hate to say this, I really do, but if a couple of members of this group can't coordinate with the council as it stands now and drop the animosity, maybe they shouldn't be on the safety committee. I know I, for one, do not want to hear all of this negative input from a couple of members. Thank you.
May I respond?
We're really not supposed to respond to public comment. So is there any other public comment for this evening? Okay, and so you can comment on the agenda items as we get to those. All right, we have item 5, power plant property safety, maintenance, and discussion. I'm very interested in how that's going. Mandy, would you like to give a report on how we're moving forward on that?
Yeah, so at this point, this was a discussion item that the Public Safety Commission wanted on the agenda. And I can just give you a brief update report from what the city is doing. And then I think the intent of this agenda item was for the commission to have their own discussion. So the city continues to monitor the power plant property. We do at least 2 rounds a day. We do a full perimeter check twice a week, if not more. We do an interior check probably like every 3 days or so. So the site is being monitored. When we find holes in the fence, we patch them. The other day, we had someone trespassing on the site, and we were able to get the sheriff out, and they were able to arrest the individual. So it's just kind of an ongoing, maintain it as is at this point. It's I think, this council is discussing options for the site, options for the cleanup and demolition of the plant itself. And that's an ongoing discussion. And until such time as we have some other direction that allows us to do something more than what we're doing right now, it's kind of our only option is to just kind of maintain it as is.
Thank you. It looks like it's being maintained as far as I haven't noticed the gate being broken like it has been in the lock. So that seems to be working.
Yeah, I
But
think,
we're
a
looking
lot
into the summer now when there's
Yeah.
more traffic in that area with people recreating at the
So that
river.
the trespasser, did he go in there to move in?
No,
and
he was just
establish it?
coming through.
He was just coming through. Okay.
Other questions or comments from commissioners before I open it to the public? Lynn?
I'm curious about our insurance,
Mhm.
and what, if there are any requirements from our insurance company for abandoned properties?
Yeah, so when we obtained site control over the property, we brought our risk managers out immediately. And they toured the site with us and looked at what our plan was to secure the site. They recommended, obviously, that we have signage, that we put it on regular rounds, and that, we keep up with, if we find holes in the fence, that we fix those. They felt that actually the site wasn't in that bad a shape with the fencing. There's, top barbed wire. It's, it is what it is. There's it's a big property. It's over 20 acres, so it's difficult to get in and out of, and for, us to adequately maintain, routinely. So without having like a site manager, they said that it was adequate for the city to be doing regular checks. So we put it immediately just on our regular rounds. So our staff does regular rounds for all of our critical infrastructure, even on the weekends. So we have someone on. So that's just part of those critical systems is the power plant. So they are fine with what we've done. They have other cities that have old industrial sites, and it's kind of the same thing. You always know that you run a risk of people breaking in and vandalism and graffiti, but it's really just doing our due diligence to ensure that we do have the fencing and the signage, to prevent what we can. That you're preventing the majority of the people from going in and accessing the site.
Do they do a perimeter check? I noticed a really big hole down at the bottom of the fence for a long time.
Yeah, we do perimeter checks regularly. Yeah.
As it's getting warmer, one of the other issues that has come up in the past is the wood chips have combusted. There's been smoke coming out of them and as it's getting warmer, like today was a really good example of a warm day. And I'm curious if the fire department is aware of that issue and if they have a plan about monitoring that just in case we start seeing, usually we see a little smoke before something happens, so we have a good heads up of what
Yeah,
if
so
it's gonna
we've
happen.
actually the fire department is aware of the site. We've toured the site numerous times. We have on-site fire suppression. We've kept even though we shut down all the utilities, we kept all the fire lines are open. So we have adequate, resources to be able to deal with it. The fuel is really, really wet. We've had it probed multiple times to look at, the moisture content.
Okay.
So, you will get you can get some of that combustion, but the moisture content of the material is so high that the chance of an actual flame up is fairly low. But it is a concern as it continues to deteriorate and those piles start to disintegrate and get lower, that moisture content will start to, to get lower. And that's when you start to have, more of a chance for something to combust. But yeah, the fire department's very well aware of it. We do have fire access all the way around. It's got its own hydrants on site. And we do have high pressure hydrants around the full perimeter.
Okay, any other questions before I open it up to the public?
Is there any concern or plans on getting rid of it?
Yeah, so the council is considering some options. That is part of the battery storage project that they're looking at. That project would demo the power plant. So that's one of the options that they're looking at is the viability of selling 2 acres of the property in exchange for demoing the larger footprint of the full facility without the wood pile. The wood pile is kind of an anomaly. It's really difficult to get rid of. And so we're looking at more local resources to be able to offload those fuels because the trucking cost associated with that is just so extremely high that it just makes it cost prohibitive. Yeah.
Was the
Yeah.
chips and stuff?
Yeah, the chips, there are some options locally that we've looked into. We've looked at some of the farmers. We've had quite a few farmers and ranchers who are actually interested in the material because they can spread it on their fields, and it does have value for and they also in the past they were able to get carbon credits for those through USDA, so there were some value in that respect as well. If we could find a local off taker, that's, then it's a much shorter haul. So then you reduce, the number of, you can get shorter trips, it's less fuel, and it's a quicker offload. So we're looking at more local off takers for that. So that is something that's being looked into. But we have looked up one side and down the other trying to find people. We've talked to Royal Gold and West Green and every Fox Farms and, anyone who makes, mulch and fertilizers and things. It just doesn't have, we've looked at offloading it to the power plant, seeing if Scotia wanted it, but the moisture content's too high, it's just too degraded. So it doesn't have any value. You could have free mulch for the community, but that would take 20 years to, get rid of it at that point. So we really need to have a larger, off taker to be able to get rid of it. So.
Have you spoken to Royal Gold?
We've talked to everybody.
She mentioned
We've
Royal
talked to,
Gold,
yeah, we've talked to USDA, all of our USDA ag reps too. They've put the word out. We've talked to Air Quality to see if they had anyone that was interested that might have biomass or any other kind of projects. We've talked to Cal Poly. We've talked to, just anyone that we could think of that, we've looked down south. We've looked, I think the nearest group that could take it possibly on as just kind of like a salvager is like somewhere way down like the Central Valley area. Okay. And so it just costs so much to haul it. So it's really the hauling cost is what kills it.
So you said farmers are interested, or you
Yeah,
said
you can spread it on your
farmers?
fields.
Oh.
They can do carbon sequestration and get carbon credits for it. So as part of some of their ag programs, I don't know with the federal cuts, I don't know. I'm sure those were probably on the chopping block right away. But those are an option. And then you can also, mulch it into your field. We were thinking about maybe the Mariah's field. They have about 70 acres across Hatchery Road.
Yeah, that'd be easy.
And then looking at that because, you can
Close.
spread it. It helps your soil. It's, helps to, we put a lot of that stuff in our horse pastures and stuff just to help with the mud and everything. So, we're just trying to like find options for it. But it's probably the hardest part of the whole project is trying to find someone to get rid of those fuel piles. Yeah, at some point we'll be able to, if we can get a large quantity off the site, we could also spread, quite a bit of it and then allow that to degrade. If we could get, 6 or 10 inches of it spread across a large, section, large acreage, that will degrade a lot faster than having these massive piles. So at some point there's kind of, a tipping point where we get to a point where we can maybe handle some of it on site. But right now the quantity is just too big.
Yeah, because I know years ago we had Blue Lake Power come in and spread it out a little bit more because it was getting so high. And also it's another attractive nuisance for children could
absolutely,
get hurt there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like a sand pile
Yeah,
situation.
it's definitely a high concern.
Yeah, okay. Well, being proactive is good. Any other concerns or questions from commissioners before I open it up to the public? Any public would like to weigh in on this? Dave Ponte, Annalise?
Dave Ponte, 311 H Street. Considering the safety issue, which I guess is what you guys are more concerned about, and the fire risk of the hog fuel, and your concerns about the status of that. Power Transitions originally was looking at complete care for the derelict power plant plus mitigation of all of the grounds, including the hog fuel.
Right.
That has such changed, and that's isolated just to the power plant. Hog fuel stays the same, which includes several layers of tires that Blue Lake Power intended on burning at some point in time, in addition to lots of natural fuel, which is what they were typically burning for some time. So it's just curious to me that here we are, we still have a pile of hog fuel there that is a potential danger to the community. And it all goes back to this whole idea of a battery storage plant. I'm not sure, where it goes from the term of public safety, but that power of hog fuel stays there, and there really isn't any significant option beyond somehow, I suppose, if there was ever to be a battery storage plant here, that Power Transition be responsible for removal of both the derelict plant and all of the hog fuel. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Elise Capani. I'm your council liaison. So at our last, not our last, well, I guess it was our last meeting, we formed an ad hoc committee to look at the power plant and consider safety and other concerns. And Michelle and I are that ad hoc committee, and we have not had a chance to meet and walk around out there yet. But some of the concerns that have been brought up are some of the bunkers, some of the cement bunkers that previously had groundwaters regularly pumped out of them, and they were bunkers where people could climb down to maintain wiring and different facilities of the plant. So those have filled up with groundwater and rainwater, and so those are a concern. One of the issues we'd like to look at is dealing with that concern, either by pumping the water out now that it's stopped raining, and securing the lids. Most of those bunkers have a lid to them. So that's something that could be done. Either we secure them by welding them on, or weighting them down with something really heavy that a person couldn't move. Another thing is the big the bunkers for cooling ash, the big cement. There's two big cement bunkers towards the levee that are full of water. Jeff Goldstein of Power Transitions brought up that was a drowning hazard. And that is just rainwater. There is no outlet of that to those containers there, so we could pump that out onto the ground and just eliminate that drowning concern, and also mosquito breeding habitat. I have no ideas for how to keep people from climbing the tower, but that might be something that we could look at. And as we know, even if the council were to go forward with Power Transitions, they're looking at demolishing the building only and not dealing with the hog fuel. So that's maybe something that we could begin to try to make some movement on. I know it sounds silly, and it's just, it's just little tiny baby steps for such a large pile, but we could potentially start trying to give it away. If we did some stuff, we'd have to look at the cost of staffing to be out there with a loader to load pickup trucks or something, or even maybe dumping it like all those chips on the side of the road always go away. If once a week we had staff take a few dumps, a few shovels of it and dump it outside the fence and people could come and take it. I know it's silly, but people, they say, well, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So that's our elephant. And maybe we start doing it one load at a time. I don't know. But the other concern, I know that some of the fencing is not visible very easily, and so there could be a hole in some of that fencing that we can't see by walking around the outside or looking from the inside. So an idea that I brought forward was possibly going in with some machinery and making a navigable road inside the fence, so somebody could drive every day the full perimeter inside the fence and make sure that the fence is secure, and be able to see all parts of the facility. So that's all I got.
It would be difficult to put a road in on the far end of the plant down there because there's a thick copse of woods that the fence runs through, and it's grown up inside very close to the fence.
Mhm.
And there's every bramble. So, I mean, you get in there with a bulldozer.
Some of that's been cleared, I think, but I guess some of it isn't. But anyway, I'm not really. I'm just looking at potential for improving surveillance and response to breaches in the fence and whatnot. So
Has anyone spoken to the rancher who's working the Silva Ranch over across the Hatchery Road from the Powers Creek district? It's not in the city.
in what regard?
Is that the Christies are running that now?
Mario
Avalar.
Yeah.
Mario Avalar's out there.
Yeah. Okay, well, that grass pasture nearest to the road was inundated with rain during the early spring months. And I would think that if he raised the level of that, his cattle were getting hoof rot during the season. So he may be, if the Christies are contacted, I think they may be willing to take some off our hands and cover that with it.
That's the ranch we've been talking with.
You have,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, so you have talked with them? And
Yeah,
they're-
it's
and
owned
they
by
are
the Leal
interested?
family, and it's leased out to Mario Avalar and Ray Christie. So, yeah.
Avalar, yeah. So, and you said that they are interested.
We have been
in-
making contact about an option. That's the closest ranch. It's about 70 acres out there. So it would be the
That would be
closest for us to be able to offload the fuel.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be a good idea.
Are they interested in paying for hauling?
No. No one's interested in paying for hauling.
I like those low-hanging fruit ideas of pumping out the water. I think that's, again, back to the insurance, because I'm concerned about liability. The city does the things that can be done without great cost. I think it shows that we're interested in trying to protect the public.
Right,
And we're being as safe as we can with that difficult situation.
right.
So those
Being
are some
proactive,
some
yeah.
really easy ideas that sound really good, especially mosquitoes.
Yeah.
I think we could bury a treasure out in the chips and tell them if they take a load, then somewhere they can find, we can get something there like maybe something very valuable. It's not metal, no metal detectors allowed, and we'll get all kinds of people out there taking those to their house.
Well, it's an ongoing discussion, and I want us to keep on top of that as a safety commission, because as you pointed out, it is a safety issue. The summer is coming, as I keep thinking about all the families that recreate on the river, and again, this
Kids are at
attractive
school.
nuisance. Yeah, true. Yeah, so it's good to know that the city is monitoring it and twice a day and mending the fence when necessary. So that's good. Okay, I think we'll move on, if there's no further discussion, to traffic calming and street improvements fiscal year 2025, 2026.
Just a second. So are we with these items, I'm new, so I'm asking
Yeah.
questions. Are we expected to make recommendations to the council at some point? Are we just discussing items, or how do you handle this?
Well, what we've been mostly doing is discussing, and then we indicate to our liaison what items we would like the city council to further discuss and to possibly put on their agenda. So
Make recommendations regarding the subject matter, or?
yeah, we could go by subject matter.
Mhm.
But it looks like, from what I'm hearing, that the council is aware of this particular item and moving forward, and that staff is also doing their due diligence as far as keeping it safe. So, you know, if you have a particular suggestion for going forward on item 5 before we move to 6.
In terms of recommendations?
Yeah,
I would suggest we recommend just that maybe do some of the easiest things to be done if it would make the plant safer. But again, I'm new here, so I don't know what your history is and why we're discussing this. So
uh-huh,
just ask
Yeah.
questions.
yeah. Well, I think what we get is an update of what's going on, and then, yeah, we can make recommendations. And also, when it comes to our liaison, we can also indicate to her what we would like to see as far as what the council will move
Mhm.
forward. On this particular item, it sounds like, things are moving in the right direction, from what I can see. I mean, unless you would like to make a further recommendation. Your concern is the insurance issues, which is good.
Safety
Yeah,
and liability.
yeah. Mhm.
I think
Would you like to be part of our little ad hoc committee and join us when we walk around the plant?
I don't know that I have expertise till then, but I just wanted to lend support to your work. It sounds like you and Michelle are talking about some, again, easy things to do that would move us in the right direction. I think we've been in this situation for so long, that's really important. So I want to offer support, I guess, but you recommend to the council, and you are the council, so. So I think you're good.
All right, so that brings us to item 6, traffic calming and street improvements for fiscal year 2025, 2026. And this is a discussion item. Mandy, did
Yeah.
you have it? Is that the map that you included in our packet? Or are there particular
Those
areas?
are incident maps, I think.
Yeah,
for the-
okay.
For the incident report from the sheriff's department.
Right, yeah. Well, we've discussed I Street. I know that's one of the things that has come up with this commission, that it is a wide street and people tend to speed on wide streets, and that's been brought forward by some of the neighbors, and we've got some ideas about how we might be able to calm the traffic on that street. Are there any other, and we've of course done all this beautiful improvement on the Greenwood Avenue school safety street here. So so is there any other areas of town that we're looking at?
Yeah, so at your last meeting, we kind of went through the local road safety plan, and that was the report that the city and the city council adopted, that kind of identified areas in the community that had opportunities for some lower impact, lower cost improvements to make it safer for pedestrian and bicycle safety. So I wanted to we've had this item on most of the agendas because I think it's an important discussion to continue to have, and it's a opportunity for us to continue to look creatively at solutions. As the city moves forward with our 25-26 budget, we usually budget for a couple of road projects. We do receive some local road money through the RMR program, and it's about $26,000. And we usually try and match that with maybe some HCOG funding or some of our other street money to do a little bit larger project. So maybe it's a larger paving project or a safety improvement. So this year we've received money from HCOG through the Transportation Development Program to design, engineer, and install a mini roundabout on G Street. And the idea with that is to be able to have an engineered set of plans that can also be utilized in other areas in the community where it could be applicable. So we have done a lot of work through the LRSP, and then we had Dan Burden come out and he's kind of the local road safety guru, walked around with us, looked at some of our areas where we have these higher intersections of, bicycle, pedestrian, and vehicular traffic. And G Street especially is a really high concerned area. It's got a high traffic volume. It's got a lot of intersections of uses. It's on our safe routes to school. Kids come off the bridge or coming from, Northfield Terrace area, coming across the bridge to get to school, and they're coming into direct contact in an area where we get a high volume of vehicles coming through to go to the post office or using it as kind of a shortcut to get up to the boulevard. So we have had a couple of dogs hit there. We've had vehicles hit. We've had a lot of near misses. And so that's a high priority area for us. And it's one that we're focusing on for 25-26. And so the idea with that section of road is G Street up to Hartman, is to make the section of Hartman a one-way. Through the local road safety plan, it was found with the county that section of Hartman doesn't have enough site clearance to be able to safely egress onto the boulevard. And so it's also not really wide enough for two-lane traffic, because a lot of the houses on Hartman have either had like little carriage houses when they were originally built. They didn't really have off-street parking built into how their houses were designed. So you have a lot of vehicles parked on the main road. And then you have the danger of vehicles trying to enter onto the boulevard. And it's a high traffic, high speed area with a crown. And it's just really, really dangerous. So we walked that section quite a few times with the county as well as some of the other engineers. And it was recommended that we make that an ingress only. That would limit and reduce traffic in that area because people would take another route to get out. So it would start to decrease some of the traffic on G Street. But we also want to make sure that as we push traffic to other areas, we don't want to push all that traffic flow also onto Second and kind of at the little residential area. So the idea of the mini roundabout is just another opportunity to slow traffic, make it a little bit less likely that people can go through there quickly. So encouraging them to take the larger routes that actually have the capacity and have the infrastructure that can handle the larger traffic volume. So we would want people to go back onto First and then go up to Greenwood to exit, rather than going through the residential areas that really can't handle that flow of traffic. So the idea for the 25-26 proposal for road funding is to work on the G Street Hartman section. It also is really deteriorated, so it does need some improvements. The pavement is probably one of our worst roads at this point, so we do need to put lay down some new asphalt and do some patching. But then also to be able to look at that design for possible installation, possibly on I Street, and then working with our engineers this summer on some other installations on I Street to help slow down traffic. I Street's got a lot of stuff going on. You've got a lot of residences. It's an extremely wide street. It's got a tot lot. It's got some visibility issues coming to the south from the boulevard onto I Street. It kind of crowns a little bit to the tot lot, creates some visibility issues for any kids crossing. So it's really something that, we need to put some more emphasis on. We talked about a four-way stop, but as we've talked about and as we see every day, up by the post office, people don't stop at stop signs. And it really gives a false sense of security to people crossing, that people are going to, adhere to those stop signs. So we really need to look at some physical installations to slow traffic down, make it more difficult for people to speed through that area. The nice thing about I Street is it is really wide, and it's got a lot of opportunity to do some nicer installations. We could do signage. We talked about changing some of the parking configurations to be able to make the road feel like it's more narrow than it is. That's a proven tactic to be able to slow traffic down, is to make people feel like they're a little bit more constrained. You'll see that on Greenwood. We did that quite a bit with some of the bulb outs. Even though those bulb outs are the same size as what a car would be if it was parked there, people, they react to them and they slow down. So there's some opportunities. I think we could do some nice installations of even some bulb outs that maybe are some planters. It's a really beautiful street. There's some really nice homes along there with some really beautiful landscaping. And so, that could be an opportunity as well to, make it feel smaller, make it feel more like a residential boulevard than like a speedway. It's also a road that people use as a cutover to get to the boulevard. So it gets a high volume of traffic of people using that to be able to speed through, get to the boulevard to get out of town. So that's another one that, we really need to think a lot about and look at some ways that, we can address the issue. Like I said, we do have a playground right there as well. And so that's a real big concern, making sure that kids are safe and that they have, safe crossings. So some signage. We talked about installing speed limit signs, and looking at kind of a host. I think it's going to be kind of a smorgasbord of options, but I think it could be done in a way that can be really nice and really enhance and play off of the qualities of that neighborhood. Like I said, there's some real beautiful houses and landscaping, and so being able to kind of integrate with that, I think, could make a really nice streetscape there that could make it a lot safer.
Have you talked about speed humps along that
Yeah, we
road?
have looked at speed humps. It's such a wide stretch.
Yeah,
And, one of the problems that we have, when you have something so wide, people, if you can't go all the way across, people will go around them. And so it doesn't necessarily lend itself just because of the width of it and kind of the construction of that street. You have some sections of it that aren't paved, so you're into gravel. So the asphalt doesn't usually connect well with, the gravel. It needs to kind of tie into another either concrete or asphalt surface. So that starts to erode really quickly and cause issues and stuff. So.
Well, I know I spoke with Kim Wavery, who lives on G Street, where we had the temporary roundabout, and she really liked it. She has 2 young boys, and she said she noticed a big difference with people. And again, it was a case of being surprised and just being a little more cautious. And even if after a while the temporary roundabout didn't look that great, the idea of it was that it made people slow down. And she told me she really was in favor of having it in a more permanent way. So, and she's one of the main, she lives on the corner there, so she's one of the main.
Is that the corner of A and G? Or
Yeah.
Hartman, A and Hartman?
Is it?
The
It's
three-way
G
there,
and
or?
I think it's F.
Second.
Or okay. Yeah, she lives in the White House across from the
Yeah,
bridge.
just
Yeah.
curious as to which intersection would have the roundabout. So it's A and G Hartman, that,
G and Second.
no? Second, oh, okay. Okay,
Yeah, it's further north by a block.
right, it's just one more.
Where the bridge goes up.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, and she noticed a big difference and an improvement, and she's concerned about that because her boys play out in her front yard. She really doesn't have much of a backyard, so she uses her front yard quite a bit for playing. And
yeah, we
she
received
liked
quite a
that.
bit of feedback from the residents in that area, and it's really good feedback. It helps us as we look at kind of the engineering, the size and scope, and the style. There's a lot of different options. Obviously it'd be really small, but there's ways to to make it so that maybe the the flush mount part of it could be even like a stamped brick, and then you just have a small planter in the middle, but it makes it seem like it's a larger roundabout, but it's flush, kind of like the roundabout up when coming into town,
Yeah.
you know, you can drive over the top of it if you need to, for emergency vehicles or the larger trucks or whatever. But, you know, most people go around it and slow down and stuff. So, you know, it's just it's an area that, you know, really part of it is discouraging the volume of traffic as well as slowing it down, and then giving, you know, people coming off the bridge as well, especially the kids, because we all know that kids, you know, they like to come down that and jump the curb. And, you know, so we want to put up a railing on the curb as they come down so they can't just go off the end right into the street, and force them to come around onto the sidewalk, and, you know, just make some, you know, some better choices of, you know, how they, you know, what route they take.
From the bridge, you mean?
Yeah, because right now there's no railing there, so
Right.
it's a curb, so it comes down and there's a really, really high curb, and a lot of the kids, you know, just kind of jump right off into the road. And
Yeah.
most of the time when kids jump off into the road, they're not looking for cars too, you know, so that high traffic volume right there is really concerning. So we're
Yeah.
looking at making some improvements to that, you know, that sidewalk area as well.
Yeah, the sidewalks are really
Mhm.
crumbling in that area too. So you're looking at that $26,000 from the Humboldt County Association of Governments to be used for that area? for
Yeah,
mini
so that was
roundabout there?
specifically written for the roundabout installations.
okay,
Yeah. So
okay.
the project description was to do an installation, but also be able to use that design to be able to place in other areas if applicable. So kind of having it really matches up with our local road safety plan, because the LRSP is really focused on like creative, lower cost solutions.
And then I guess the other area of concern that's been brought up is in front of the museum. And I know that some of the ladies that work at the museum have noticed that it's mostly the trucks that are having some issues with being able to stop, and there's confusion about what is happening there with the trail, even though the trail has stop signs. um, you know, and that's where the children are supposed to stop or the families are supposed to stop. And I noticed that the engineer was out there. It's been a few months scoping it out there. And is that an area that's large enough for a roundabout, or is that another idea for that?
Yeah,
area.
so that whole area is being looked at as part of the full truck route design. So,
okay.
so we were funded through the state to design and engineer the full truck route all the way to the bridge.
Oh, okay.
We got construction funding to make those installations from the boulevard down here to the corner. So our next segment that will apply for construction funding is from, you know, here in the corner down up to the bridge. So
Okay.
that whole area, it has been looked at for engineering, safety. It's a really complicated area. It's got a lot of constraints. It's got a lot of intersections of uses. But there is a design to be able to make that a much safer space. We did look at a roundabout up there, but we just don't have the clearance for it. And with the trucks being able to make that wide turn, you really can't do it. So we're really hamstrung a little bit in that area just because it is a designated truck route. There's only so many things that we can do before we start to run into, you know, issues of accommodations for large truck traffic. So the biggest thing that we've been focusing on is just making them slow down. You know, if the trucks can come through slower, there's no reason why they can't stop. They're rolling those stop signs because they don't want to slow down. They don't want to gear down. They don't want to have to stop and start. And so they do roll those. I think the museum corner safety improvements is actually on your agenda.
Oh.
So I don't know if you want to save
Oh, yeah, I'm
that.
sorry. Yeah, okay, we jumped ahead a little. All right, let's go
Yeah, I
ahead.
should have
Let's
just
not,
incorporated
yeah,
those.
sorry, that I didn't think that. Okay, well, let's open up. Commissioners, did you have any other questions concerning the projects possibly on I Street and the one on G in Second?
Yeah, I'm wondering what kind of public input we're taking when you're designing this in terms of the neighbors and people who are, I guess, most impacted citizens. What point in the process are you informing, asking for feedback and that kind of thing?
Sure. So through the local road safety plan, we spent many months conducting outreach, community meetings, community walks. We did several presentations. We did specific outreach to the different neighborhoods to look at what those issues were, to look at options and come up with ideas. We also went through a lot of data related to the sheriff call data, looking at any type of traffic incidents. We put out an online story. I think it's called like Story Walk or something, where you could actually go on and just answer a survey about any type of incidents you've had in specific areas, things that you've seen. If you've had a fender bender or, saw something happen, so that you could go out, because we have very few actual crash incidents in town. So when we go in through the CHP and the sheriff data systems, we can't extrapolate very much data to support the idea that we do have safety concerns. So we really had to look at different ways to kind of tease out information from people. So we met with the school, we talked with the kids, we met with the sheriff, CHP, we met with the bus drivers, we outreach to the trucking community. We did a lot of outreach through the process, and that's how the local road safety plan was developed. A lot of these ideas were then presented and implemented into that report.
So these were for the specific I Street, G Street.
Basically the whole city. So we did isolate down like our higher traffic volume areas. So, really looking at, the city's small, it's not hard to, we only have so many main thoroughfares. So we isolated down some of our main routes and then still allowed for discussion in neighborhoods and, and looked at concerns.
Other commissioner? Yeah, Alex?
My experience on Greenwood before and after the project that was completed this year has sold me on speed bumps. I wasn't a fan of speed bumps. Drivers aren't a fan. But the traffic calming that is taking place on Greenwood is extraordinary. I would recommend another one down here, right by the speed limit sign. That one's too close to this end. So I would. I'm saving my other comments for the museum thing because I think the same thing. But I would say speed bumps, speed bumps, speed bumps. It seems to me the simplest, and it really works. And one other thing, in my walking around Blue Lake, the most courteous and driving on the highway, the most courteous drivers I see are truck drivers. I have seen truck drivers in operation save very serious situations just by their driving so far ahead that they know what's going to happen and they start taking maneuvers. So, yeah, they roll through stop signs, but it's about 3 miles an hour. I mean, it's what I see, what concerns me the most are people coming into town, coming off the freeway, and I'm glad for the circle up there because it does slow down. But coming the other way from West End, when they hit that bridge coming across the river, some of them are doing up near 50 miles an hour.
Yep.
And they come across there, they pay no attention to that speed sign up there, none. So I would put one right at the end of the bridge. Okay, and if they hit it at 50 miles an hour, let them get a suspension job then. But I would also like a couple more along Hatchery down there because that's where I see the most speeding going on.
You mean
So,
speed humps you want to see
speed
down there?
bumps. Oh yeah. Big fan of them.
Interesting. Is there some rule about how many you could have, how close they can be, or
Yeah, there's
frequency?
definitely rules related to speed bump installations, and I'm a super big fan of them as well because I really feel like the only thing that slows people down really is some type of physical barrier. And so, I live next to the park, and for years that was a major straightway. And you know, we had so many near misses. We still have people that speed down it and jump the speed humps and stuff, but it has reduced the speed through there dramatically. And I'm sure that it's, you know, saved, you know, animals and potentially, you know, people by having those in there. We tried everything for years, you know, standing out there, signage, you know, whatever you could do to try and, you know, raise awareness. But the only thing that ever has worked is actually the speed humps. But you do have to have those engineered, and there's specific requirements about where they can go, distances between driveways. We did look at having one closer down here at the intersection of Greenwood and First Street. But the problem was the turn. You can't turn that way onto the speed bump like that on like the main for us they're kind of like major collector roads, even though that's really kind of reserved more for like a boulevard and a highway. But for us, they're, you know, the routes that collect the most volume of traffic, and so also for the fire trucks coming out and responding, coming around the corner into a speed bump with, you know, heavy loads and things. So that's why we kind of necked stuff down. We have the bulb outs up here as well. And then we kind of reshifted the corner coming across with the crosswalk was done. And we're seeing, you know, we are seeing people slow down in this section. And, you know, you're always going to have people that speed through if they don't have something that physically prevents them. But yeah, speed bumps are something that do have to be engineered, and, you know, you kind of have to meet some of the thresholds about where they're installed and the size and, you know, the levelness and,
Grade
you know,
and
all of
everything,
it, the grade, and
Mm.
depending on what kind of traffic you have on it too. That was one of our constraints too with the trucks coming over by the school. You know, those are more of a tabletop versus, you know, more of a roll, because, you know, we have to be able to accommodate those large loads. So when we designed Greenwood, we actually brought through Kernan's biggest load. So they have this massive trailer that I don't know if it brings like through like some type of gravel equipment or the yarders for Green Diamond, but we actually had them come through and we measured all of those turn radiuses and stuff and the height of those trailers to make sure that they could, one, make the turn, and two, clear any type of installation. So that was all engineered in partnership with the trucking companies.
Any other concerns or questions from commissioners? We're open to the public.
Listening to the public outreach that was done for the general plan, I think I heard some of that, saw the surveys, and I think
Is
that
a local road safety plan, not the general plan.
right. I misspoke. That's
The general plan was like
important
30 years
speaking.
ago.
Yes, I know. Sorry. It seems like maybe in the past there have been other general plans, there have been plans that in general have dealt with larger issues in the city, and then once we get down to specifics, people aren't aware of the conversation and what the thinking is and what might be happening that would affect them personally. So I'm just thinking, particularly with this one, as you narrow it down to certain streets, it might be a good time to once again outreach specifically to that part of the public and get their feedback as to what their ideas are, what their observations are, because they can certainly be helpful.
Yeah, and I think the Public Safety Commission did that last year. We actually put flyers on everyone's doors in that
Really?
neighborhood and invited them to come in and talk specifically. So we got some really good
That's
feedback
really
from,
good.
and that was at a time too where we had the mini roundabout installed. So we were getting some feedback from that and stuff. So yeah. Yeah, so those, so a lot of those ideas were incorporated with the signage, and, you know, there was talk about the four-way stop. One of the things that we'll be doing is painting that road this year too, to delineate the lanes. So yeah, so we did, you know, conduct some of that outreach.
Right. Well, I have
And
a-
not everyone's going to agree. You know, and the problem with, you know, it might be, you know, it's someone's neighborhood, but it's also being used by a lot of people in the community. And when we have things like a playground and things that, you know, the city has to really be cognizant of, you know, sometimes you have to make installations or changes that, you know, not everyone's going to agree on everything. We had the same thing in our neighborhood when we put the speed humps in. You know, there were neighbors that were like, I hate these. I don't like the noise. I don't like people starting and stopping, you know, but in the end, you know, it's like for the greater benefit, you know, they had to be installed. So, and then, you know, you learn to work through it. And we did the same thing on South Railroad. We made South Railroad a one-way. because it should never have been a two-way. It couldn't accommodate it. And we were getting over 900 cars a day going down South Railroad or coming up to try and get into town to shortcut going down Greenwood. And, we were just having a lot of issues with it. And, it took everyone a while to get used to. We had, one neighbor who refused to use it as a one-way and kept going as a two-way. And she finally has, decided that, okay, you know what, actually, it's okay. Actually, it's all right. People are slowing down in front of her house. She's got a grandkid now. That's like a whole different thing, when you have little ones and you start going like, hey, you know what, actually, maybe it's okay that people are going a little slower here. So, it's, you just got to kind of weigh the benefits, so.
Right.
Okay.
Well, I think addressing the issue in the manner of cost and low hanging fruit, I don't think that stop signs should be dismissed. They work. A lot of people are law abiding. The fact that some people run stop signs is not an excuse to not install one. That's like saying, well, we're not going to install a stoplight here because people run red lights. That really doesn't track. Another thing I think is those speed limit signs that have the radar, the solar powered radar things on them. Those are effective. Those are proven effective. They have the mobile one down in Eureka and in Arcata and some of the neighborhoods, and they haul it to different spots that are speedways, and they put it there and they leave it for a time, and people see it. The light comes on, it shows their speed. They drop their speed. For the most part, there's always going to be knuckleheads who are going to try to get the highest score on the game. And there's always going to be knuckleheads who are going to run stop lines, but that's really not, to me, a valid reason to not put them in, especially if the community is requesting them at those spots. Speed limit signs, asking the sheriff to post a deputy there during commute for a few days or a certain day of the week, or rotating. Those are other effective methods to do that. You just have to communicate with the sheriff's department, and they'll do it. You just have to request it. So I think the low hanging fruit is those solutions, and then you can look at other possibly traffic calming measures when you have the money to put in sidewalks and bulb outs or planters or whatever you want to try to do to narrow this to visually narrow the street. But I think the neighbors that I've talked to in that area would prefer stop signs. They would prefer speed limit signs, and they would prefer some enforcement. So that's what I'm hearing.
Well, a few years ago, we took out all the yield signs in town and turned them into stop signs because there was so much confusion as to what yield means, and so we just decided it doesn't have a meaning. So those became stop signs, and people understand that. So that's a good point.
Part of that I Street thing is since it's wide open, there's no stop sign. People just accelerate, and they just keep accelerating. Well, if you have a stop sign there, that's going to break that. That's going to break that acceleration, and they're not going to be able to get up the head of steam, depending on where you put them.
Okay, if there are no more comments from the commissioners, I'll open it up to the public for discussion. Lori Ponte, then Marty Granger, and then Ruben Ledesma. And I don't know your name, sorry.
Thank you. I'm Lori Ponte, and I live on H Street, so I'm between G and Hartman and I. First, I'd like to compliment the work that was done on Greenway. I think it's done really great service to slowing traffic with the speed humps. I have 2 grandkids who attend the school, so I do appreciate it. It's frustrating not to find a parking spot because of the bulb outs, but that's, you can always find a place to park. Being in the middle of I Street and G Street, it's interesting because you can't go across the bridge onto G Street in a straight shot anymore. There have been some fences put up. So even if somebody tried, they couldn't shoot off the sidewalk unless they stopped once they got through that little curve onto G Street, which would be where the roundabout, the temporary roundabout was. So that comment kind of concerns me because it's really not true. And I've walked my dogs over the bridge across G Street. And, you have to look both ways, which I don't know that people do that anymore. They assume they have the right of way as a pedestrian, but you should look both ways before you cross the street, whether there's a sidewalk or not. So if you want to take a look at what that bridge looks like, you really can't shoot off across going onto G Street because there's railings there. Luckily, because it used to be different. I Street, I've been driving it more when I leave home because there's more traffic. It's slower going up Greenway to get onto Blue Lake Boulevard. So I go up First or Second Street, get on I Street. Looking both ways. You're driving a car, you're walking across the street. I think that's common sense, and maybe that's what we're lacking. But I do believe that instead of going to the extreme of roundabouts and diagonal parking, that should be stop signs should be considered. Start with that. It's the least expensive way to go. We don't have any crosswalks from one side of I Street to the other side on any of those intersections. So I was speaking to Marvin Samuelson, who lives right on the corner of, I think it's 3rd and I. And he says there are as many pedestrians walking up and down I Street, crossing I Street, as there are vehicles. So he's in support of either stop signs or speed bumps. I really think that this commission could form an ad hoc committee to speak with the residents. I know ad hocs that's kind of like a nasty word to some people, but I think that even though maybe there was some kind of survey done a year and a half ago, it really was a different conversation than it is now. I think we have proven fact that, Greenwood has been improved and is a much slower pace to cross. I think I Street is, it's a thoroughfare at times. We have a natural speed bump from Blue Lake Boulevard before you get to 5th Street because of the tree. The root, yeah. So it's affected the road, but I really think that before this commission makes any recommendation, I think it serves you well to want to find out what the people on I Street, how they feel about that, what they see every day, what the people on G Street, more than just one resident, sees every day. I think Hartman being a one-way street off of Lake Boulevard in towards town makes complete sense. I think the end of H Street between 3rd and 4th, that little alley should be one way in whatever direction, because people come up 8th Street at just as fast and might have to make a turn onto 3rd because they realize that they can't go all the way through. So there have been a lot of studies done. I think there needs to be a more practical approach. I think there are people here who live on I Street. There are people, I don't know if there's anybody here that lives on G Street, but I think it's worth the amount of time to look at what their input is, not just someone who is an expert on walking through town or recommendations from engineering. So I would like to ask that something is done in a more productive way to get input from the residents from G Street, H Street, I Street, even J Street on, what makes the most amount of sense and would be a practical solution to some of the speed that's going on. Thank you.
Marty, I think you were next, then Ruben, and then this young lady.
The problem I have with I Street is trying to get across it from 2nd, 3rd, 4th. I can't see if anything's coming, and that's kind of easy to remedy. You just paint so that no cars can park on the corner, near the corner. And then I could see. But I'm halfway out in the street before I can really see if anything's coming. Thank you.
Thank you. Ruben?
Hi, my name's Ruben Ledesma. I live on the corner of Third and I, probably the biggest intersection in the town of Blue Lake. And I am retired, so I get to sit out on my porch and read. And I see a lot of things on my corner, and I have had the police there on a couple of occasions to help out with some vandals. We do need to slow down that road. And I have personally followed people and confronted them, and a lot of them don't know the speed limit is 25 miles an hour. It would be nice to have, like you said, put up a sign. We have nice people in this little town that might see it and see that thing start blinking, like Mandy put the sign up here that slowed them down here. Let's do the same thing up there. Let's keep it simple, but not a roundabout. A roundabout, I had to listen to a lot of noise out there. Let's keep it simple. The simplest thing sometimes can be your solution. No need to go out and contact your engineers and go through a bunch of stuff when the simplest thing would be put a sign. I even cemented part of my yard to make the sidewalk on my corner a little larger, and the city is more than welcome to put a sign there if you want. I even bought a stop sign and I gave it to Glenn last year when they were out there doing work and asked him, please put a sign out here. I've been after it for a couple of years myself, and I'm just asking, let's keep it simple. There's no need for a big, thing out there again. Let's turn to your neighbors and ask them to slow down nicely. I mean, I've been following people home and just asking them nicely. We live in a nice town, you guys. Confront the people. The solutions that Mandy is proposing as far as all the the big jobs, that'll slow everybody down for sure. But let's try something simple to begin with and see if we can remedy it simpler. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Yes. Could you give us your name,
I'm
please?
Teresa Swatsky. I am Buster's neighbor.
Okay.
I live on the middle of Third Avenue between H and I. And I agree with Lori and with Buster and with you, Ted, and also with you, Lynn. A simple, less expensive way to do things, I think, is the best way. And I agree with the input of the stop signs on either side of I Street, on the corner of Third and I. And also, if we could get a stop sign over on the corner of Third and H on H Street, because they round the corner from your house, they come flying around that corner. And like you say, just because you think they might not stop, some people are going to stop. Some people are going to look at the stop sign, look at the speed limit and say, oh, I better slow down or I better stop. And I just think it's worth a try to do the simple things first. And I don't want a roundabout. I think spending money we don't need to spend when we could try a simpler solution is the best way to go. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Teresa.
Oh, sorry. I checked to see when it was that we had that meeting where lots of the residents were here, and that was November 13th, 2023. So, and that is on video, and I did send it to the two people whose emails I had handy, but I will, when I get home, send it to the rest of the commission if I can. I'm not sure that I can actually put that through, but anyway. And if any of you want to send me an email, I will gladly send it to you, and you can find my email address on the city website. So anyway, there was lots of great feedback at that meeting, and once again, the overwhelming ask was speed limit sign, stop sign, and again, start at the beginning, start simple, and let's see what we can do. And thank you, Ruben, for your efforts at enforcement. And everybody for all your input. Thanks.
Did you have your hand up, Julie? Oh, okay. Dave Ponte?
I'll go next.
Okay, Julie, you'll be next.
I appreciate the simple sort of approach to this. It's like, when you think about the thoroughfare of I Street, it's awesome. But to have bump outs and to have roundabouts, and I mean, the success of Greenwood has been obvious. To do something like that there would require sidewalks. When was the last time sidewalks were put in on H Street? I met the guy that did it in 1940. His name was Lombardo. That would require either the city to pave sidewalks, would require the city to pave from curb to curb versus the middle 20 feet of the street. So in order to do some things like Greenwood, it would be extraordinarily costly to the city, I would suppose. And stop signs seem much more cost effective.
Thank you.
May I just ask a question, just a minute, Julie? On sidewalks, aren't the homeowners responsible for putting in a sidewalk? Is that only during construction?
I put in sidewalks in our house that was built in 1901 because of the mess that was in front of our house. I had to get a permit from the city. And at that time, the permit to put a sidewalk in was about $120. About 3 weeks later, it was 3 times the cost. So if the homeowner wants to put in a sidewalk, they certainly can. But the original sidewalks in the city of Blue Lake that were done in the 30s and 40s were done by the city of Blue Lake.
Paid for.
Paid for.
Yeah, but that isn't
They were
how,
part of construction.
New construction.
they're
yeah,
part of new
requires some-
construction.
yeah.
They're, but the city doesn't come in and build sidewalks in front of houses that have been there. But that's nice that you.
Julie Christie again. I'm going to squeak in before I have to get my sheep in. I am absorbing everybody's comments. Plus, I wrote some down. I hope I don't skip around too much. I have the farm as you come in town historically through my family. But I've lived on 4th and J since 2012 in a home that my husband's father built, Bob McGill. And so I'm very familiar with my neighbors and the traffic. And I feel that when they put in the stop sign at 4th and J, me as a resident, I was there when that happened. We weren't reached out to, but it's worked amazingly. As well as the sidewalk conversations where I'm getting derailed from my thoughts. When we moved into our home in 2012 and we're remodeling and I was pregnant and we didn't have sidewalk down 4th Street. We had kind of more the barren lot. We parked against the line. And then miraculously, for some reason, we had sidewalks on both sides. And I think that was a patron somewhere, somehow, some way.
It was a grant, I believe.
I don't know why my street was blessed. I didn't get asked why. Other neighbors got asked what they wanted in the front of their yards. I said, I like green grass. And so anyways, interesting, just pointing that out there. My son's a 6th grader. He goes to Blue Lake Elementary. I have my nephew who's also a 6th grader. He goes to Blue Lake Elementary. I have every other week for school deporte. My youngest, both the boys love walking and riding their bikes every day. I've had no conflict of interest with them doing that. The stop signs have made it easier for them to get on the bus if they need to during the rainy season. Ms. Lynch is a godsend down at the school for trafficking during those times. I do have difficulty, like I predicted, getting my truck in and out of the school, and God forbid I'll never be able to bring my trailer back there to pick up my kids. So thank goodness they're old now and mature and can deal with these things. But the stop sign did work. The roundabout was a big biff with the community. I agree with Marty earlier. If we could retract where people park at the stop signs, so that we're not having to intrude into oncoming traffic to view. And I have a nice truck. I can see better than probably most of you guys. And I still have a little trouble. On the bottom of I, when we're taking a T to go down or go to the Logger and the Del Arte, the shrubbery is actually a lot of the problem that we have seen is just normal shrubbery stuff. So when we're coming down to like doing, and this is our truck route, you guys, we already did that, and this is what happens. You start doing this, and everybody uses the other side words. They get deterred. We don't take care of them.
And we have a lot of little like danger zones that are in our town with the roadways right now. And the most things I would focus on if we have any funding to go forward with it is areas that are going to be compensated during big flooding and emergency response times, like areas that need to maybe have new culverts put in and drainage and stuff like that. We really should be focusing on that right now, I think, as a priority over beautification because of nice houses and stuff. And the tot lot's totally forgotten. I know it's not public safety preview, but I've lived there for a while and it's totally forgotten. Like we really have put no effort into keeping that up to date with the equipment, and even the speed bumps we have out here are very awkward and oblong and weird. But I just feel like we need to really focus on road safety for like infrastructure. And if we could focus on that first and then beautification, I think would be a good priority for our city. Thank you. And everybody being here. I really appreciate you all.
Is there any other public comment? Okay, so moving back to the agenda item, which was traffic calming and street improvements. It looks like the city is already moving ahead with a project for G Street and Hartman, so that is part of the plan already. And it also looks like there's a plan for making Hartman a one-way, which seems to be popular with everyone. Hearing from some of these folks that live around the H Street and I Street, and it's interesting to see how they feel about stop signs, and that
Question.
would be an idea. Yeah.
So what about stop signs? I know I'm not a traffic safety expert, but I know speed bumps have a lot of engineering issues. The traffic stop signs also do. There's a lot of implications to everything that's chosen. And I'm not an expert in any of those areas, but I have heard in the past about some of the issues. I know one of the issues is that people do have a sense of safety that they don't necessarily have if someone does not honor the stop sign. However, I also agree that stop signs are an accepted way to manage traffic, and I think they're a good idea. And they are simple and cheap. So I'm wondering what the issues might be to choose something like that.
Yeah, so we have had that area analyzed to be able to put stop signs in, and the engineers have recommended against it. We don't have the warrants that actually support the installation of a stop sign, and the way the street is configured, it doesn't lend itself to having a four-way stop. And so there are a lot of concerns on the engineer side that they won't be able to stamp, that installation because of the issues that are presented when you have a street that's that long and you have traffic coming up to it from that long of a distance and then coming up to a stop sign. There is a lot of there are going to be a lot of people that run it, and that's one of the big problems, is that lack of the feeling of safety versus what actually could happen. And so that's been the problem, is that there isn't the necessary there's not the warrants necessary. So normally you would have traffic data that supports it. So you have vehicle accidents, you have fender benders, you have collisions, you have fatalities, and that's what goes into the warrant system that helps to support where you can have certain installations. And then you have distances and things that go into the actual regulations of where you can install stop signs. So it doesn't actually meet any of those thresholds. So the concern is really putting in something that implies safety, but really isn't safe at that point. And so that's been the big problem, that our engineers don't feel that threshold can be crossed with that area.
Because the warrants, I would think.
Can I ask a question? That doesn't make any sense. If you don't have this traffic data to put in the stop sign, then you don't have the traffic data to put in a roundabout.
We don't have, so stop signs have specific thresholds in the traffic manual that you have to be able to meet to be able to comply. No, because a roundabout, you're not actually causing people to physically stop. You're slowing down, but you're allowing the flow of traffic. So there's the implication that people know that traffic is still flowing. So
the engineer doesn't like it because he's not going to make a lot of money.
no, that's not what it is. No. No, it really isn't. It's, there's a lot of data that supports that people, and especially kids and stuff traveling, I mean, people get hit by cars. They think people are going to stop and they don't. We see it every day. You can watch people run stop signs every day in town. And when you have a wide open, long street like that where people can get up a higher volume of speed and then they come up to a stop sign, it's a known fact that people are going to roll it, they're going to slow down and keep going, or they're not going to stop at all.
But if there's a crosswalk,
We don't.
has the right, I know we don't have crosswalks in London, someone brought up, let's put a crosswalk in there. Yeah. Let's say, for example, on 4th Street in Eureka, you've got to be very careful because you're driving along and there is no stop sign, there is no stop light, and people are crossing because they do have the right of way. They shouldn't take the right of way because they're going to get hit. But that logic doesn't make any sense either to me.
Well, it makes, I mean, I think,
you could talk to the
yeah,
engineer
talk to the
about it.
engineer.
He's here on Wednesday
It
mornings
makes
from
perfect
9
sense to me.
12.
Conflict of interest is that SHN is the engineer, SHN also is the contract in order to provide the service. Are they gonna wanna put in a $1,200 stop sign, or are they gonna wanna put in a $400,000 roundabout? Take your pick.
I don't think I think that's completely off the mark. Yes, I do. Absolutely. And I think that's just yeah. I mean, you can say whatever. There's a traffic manual that there's a traffic manual that you have to comply with. And we've looked it up one side and down the other to look at the regulations. And you can't make an installation that will put you in a situation where you're going to be held liable if someone is hurt. It's not, it's.
Then what there's nothing there, so it's amazing that
So-
nobody has gotten hurt.
Well, because it's not like 4th Street, for instance, in Eureka, where people have been killed.
But what about the stop signs up at the post office? Those didn't used to be
Those
there.
meet the threshold because you have a smaller section of roadway. You have areas where people have to cross to get to certain facilities. So you have a post office and thing. When you're up on I Street, you have a big, long, open road. And so you have a higher capacity for volumes of traffic versus short sections by the post office in different areas. And that's where you can meet those thresholds for those stop signs because people aren't coming up to something at 35 miles an hour and all of a sudden hitting a stop sign.
Well, I
That's the
think that
concern.
there are two opportunities on I Street for stop signs. It's not just one. If you started at 1st Street and you go 2 blocks and you put a stop sign, then you go 2 blocks and there's another stop sign, then you go 2 more blocks and it's Bullet Boulevard. You are shortening the distance between stop signs. It's not just one stop sign on I Street. There should be 2. And it should be 2 blocks in either direction off of Blue Lake Boulevard or off of 1st Street. And that's something that should be considered and looked at. I'm not sure that has been done.
And put speed bumps. We don't have the stop signs.
If the stop signs don't work, why not? Your stop signs are the least expensive option. You can put signage up showing what speed people are doing. And if that is not the best solution, then maybe speed bumps. But roundabouts don't make sense. Changing the direction of parking doesn't make sense unless you're going to pave. Why not put a bike lane on that at some point? We have no bike lanes in Blue Lake. South Railroad is one way now. It was 2-way. It worked, but we put a trail in, so we narrowed the road. So that's why we can't have it 2-lane anymore. It's not because it didn't work. It's because we needed to put a trail in, which is just fine. But that's why South Railroad is one way in 2 different directions. So, there's certain things that explain why they've been done. And before you go too far and sort of create this unnecessary mess, look at the possibility of doing something that makes sense, that is cost effective, is safe for pedestrians, cyclists, people who drive, people who walk dogs. There's a lot of traffic there, and I think that the community on I Street and H and J need to have an opportunity to give input and and their experiences. And maybe it's behind the fact that there's been time and money spent with the engineer in making this proposal, but before additional money is spent, I think that it would be worth the commission's time, the council's time to get this in there instead of having people show up at meetings and have to try to convince everyone to listen. Because I don't think that anybody is, most people have not been heard. They're just told.
If I can interrupt you for a second, I'm the only person here that lives on I Street. Nobody has told anybody about this. You guys need to let the community know on I Street that you guys are gonna do something. Send out, there's requirements when you build a certain, or you got a project, you have to notify a certain neighbor within so many feet of you before you can do anything. This is the same situation, but nobody's telling anybody what they're gonna be doing, that they're making a plan to change our main road in Blue Lake.
There has been a survey done. There have been surveys done. We've had surveys done of the people there, and we've noticed them too with
Yeah, well, but
with
what
doors,
the surveys, I mean,
door hangers.
you need to contact the people on the road, send them letters. Anybody within 500 feet of I Street need to be contacted. Hey, we're doing this. Just don't go do it.
And from what I understand, they have been contacted. Is that what I heard? That
Yeah, I mean,
past-
we're
the
still
past-
in the planning phase,
Yeah,
so we're
yeah.
still looking at
Yeah,
options
nothing's
and looking
gonna
at
be done
funding,
and
so.
right this minute.
We've heard the
so-
same comments.
Right.
Because it is in the planning phase, and I think it's important before
Yeah.
anything moves beyond that.
Yeah.
That public input is heard and listened to.
Is there an opportunity to ask the engineer to come and explain maybe at the
Yeah,
meeting?
that's a good idea.
Because
We can-
that's,
Yeah.
that would be clearer, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Another question I have, isn't there a new state law that there's no parking allowed within a certain number of feet of corners? Do you know, Mandy?
There is, yeah.
Yeah, I
So
think
we'll
that's
be
really-
implementing that this summer when we do all the red
Right.
curb painting.
That
Yeah.
could help the situation.
Yeah, so there is legislation about, oh, I guess that was Marty who's left now, about how close to a stop sign there should be parking. So that might, to the corners, excuse me, the corner.
New state law.
I was up there yesterday and there were cars all around the top lot.
Yeah, there's a new law.
Sidewalk.
It's a brand new law, just 2 months old.
Yeah, zero red curb and, or anywhere in the neighborhood, for the most part, there's no red curb, there's, parking right up to the corners.
Yeah, that has to be
I never
changed.
see children in the top lot. My God, up and down that road.
I know. Yeah, it was a good idea at one time. Lynn and I go way back with the tot lot. We
We're the
did a lot of
ones-
fundraising to
Yeah,
get
we
that
did.
done, that empty lot that was given to the city 40 years ago. And we were so excited about it. And there were a lot of children at that time that lived around there and were using it, including my kids, but we all moved away and it
We
didn't
still
get
get
used.
people using.
But that
the
issue
lot.
can go to the Park and Rec Commission because that's really their issue.
right.
However, the parking around it is ours. I mean, there's the other thing that's going on H Street in Eureka where they have the striping, where they have the parking on one side, they have the bike lane in between the sidewalks, and it is one way. Yeah, it is one way, but it's really changed things there. And that's
If
a
the
group that got
city-
that started.
If the city were to distribute the survey of your neighborhood there on I Street, let's say that whole from First to the Boulevard, that side of the creek. I don't know how many homes that would be, maybe 200 or so on. Would-
No.
Not that many.
No, it's not even that many.
What,
no.
what I'm asking is, and what I want to do it low tech,
Mm.
as little money as possible, where they're taken to the doors with a cover letter saying this is a survey that the city of Blue Lake is putting on to find out your considerations of the traffic in your neighborhood. I don't know whether to make it mobile. I'd have no idea how to put together a survey that requests answers.
Mhm.
So That would take somebody more familiar with that type of communication. If we have that in this city, we can do it in-house. Moving along, it can run through this committee. We give the final draft to the council for approval and then pass it out up there. Ask people to turn it in. Now, I would bet that if we get 15% of those returned, we're doing well. It's a lot of work to get 15, 20%, but is that then going to come to a consensus? I don't know, but I'm willing to try it. The thing is, we need help. I can't put that survey together. I don't think we should burden the city hall staff with it because they're very busy. They're understaffed and very busy. So perhaps somebody can come up with a draft for our next meeting. We can run it through the five of us, and then we can start trying to refine it.
That
And
might be an ad hoc committee.
huh?
That might be an ad hoc committee that you're commissioning.
Yes.
Survey committee or
Or
something like
a
that.
some kind of committee that you guys would give permission to create, and I don't know who, I mean, I honestly think you're gonna get more than 15%.
I'd be pleasantly surprised. I'd be pleasantly surprised. But I think it's a good exercise.
Well, Mandy, we had a survey a few years ago, and maybe that can be resurrected.
So that's your local road safety plan.
Yeah.
Local road safety plan did a ton of community outreach surveys.
Well, these people are
outreach,
saying they didn't
community
hear
walk.
it. I don't know why.
Well, we'll just have a simplified survey that's aimed at that, the residents of that street with options that they could pick, with room for them to make a recommendation that's not on the options, and run it by them. Whether we knock on doors or if we just, hang a flyer or we mail something, and then maybe,
hang on their doorknobs.
maybe go back and say, hey,
I volunteer to distribute
Yeah.
flyers.
Yeah, I don't have a problem distributing either. I would do that on my bike. I was doing that when I was campaigning. But the problem is making it, how comfortable you feel about coming up with a little survey.
well, I have pretty much all of the bullet points of what people are saying they want.
Yeah.
And also, I also know what the city has proposed in the plan. So we should include all those things.
Yeah, and then a spot where they can add
And then
their
another,
comments or whatever.
make comments or further suggestions.
Okay.
So we have a volunteer to bring us the draft survey?
Yeah, it
I'll
sounds like
I'll
it.
go ahead.
Thank you.
Good for you, Ted. Good.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, okay, good.
All right,
And that's the
so,
first step.
Be done on all the streets that are being considered for changes.
yeah, we can decide how many, well, for
So I'll
this,
get
I think
with
it
you,
should be
Lori,
I Street.
with a draft. And
I
we'll
think
go
what
over
we're
it.
talking about is I Street, but it can include all the residents that are affected by I Street, like H Street. Yeah.
The other
Yeah.
thing I'm wondering, can we, I think maybe.
Okay, there's kind of too many conversations here. We're back to the commissioners. What, Lynn, what else did you want to suggest?
I had another question.
Oh.
Could we ask our city engineer to come to the next meeting?
Oh, yeah, I
and
was
explain-
gonna,
explain
yeah, I was,
that, because there's a
let's
lot
have
of
that.
concepts that we're needing to understand that are pretty specific to
Yeah.
engineering. and
I'll get you a
chemistry.
copy of the local road safety plan also, because
Oh, that's good.
I mean, that is like, we did all of that work. We did
Yeah.
all the surveys.
our
We've heard these
Bible.
same comments. Those were
Right.
incorporated into the plan,
The
so.
more the public
yeah.
understands about the
Yeah.
engineering requirements and the things you've been talking about. So Mike Fogut maybe can come and to our next meeting.
Yeah,
talk
that
about
can be
the
under
agenda.
future agenda items. I made a note of that. That's a good idea.
Mandy, I'm sorry, what year was that local road safety plan done?
2023, I believe, 23, 24.
And that would be on.
It's on the website.
Yeah. To find it, it's called the Road Safety Plan.
Local road
Local,
safety plan.
okay, I missed that word there. Okay, local road. Okay. All right, we're going to move on to item 7, Humboldt County Sheriff Call Data Review and Discussion. I was trying to count while I was listening to folks, because the items that are bulleted are the calls that are outside of the city of Blue Lake. Is
No,
that?
they're inside.
Oh, those are the inside ones.
There are 48 of them.
Yeah, there was a separate document
Okay.
with the breakout. Sent was today. I guess it was
Oh, the one that just came
So
in?
this one that
Yeah.
that they sent today actually
Oh,
has it all kind of synthesized down
yeah,
to Blue
this is a
Lake.
good map. This is
Yeah.
very interesting.
Exactly what I was.
Mm-hmm.
And you
Thank
can
you.
access Citizen. Have you guys gone on Citizen Rims for the sheriff? It's not super intuitive, but you can go and look at all the call data.
Citizens RIMS,
On the
RIMS?
sheriff site.
Okay.
So they have a mapping program. It's kind of weird because not everything shows up, and no one's been able to figure out why. But it's pretty much the same type of information on this map, and I think you can do a heat map as well. But it'll show you within the city where the calls are and what type of calls they are.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments concerning the sheriff's call report?
So what has the discussion been about, I know during the sheriff's contract negotiations, there was some discussion about the calls that were inside the city and calls that were not inside the city and calculations as to what we should be paying for in terms of sheriff services. And so how do you discuss this information that you get every month from the sheriff?
We just take the information and note where the occurrences are, and there's really not much you can do in terms of changing anything. I mean, you can look at where the hot spots are, I suppose, but I haven't really
This is the
done
clearest
anything.
data we've received from the sheriff's department.
Yeah, we've never had a
This
map
is-
like this.
This is pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's
it's-
excellent.
We've usually just had what, well, you
I
have it in
don't-
the packet, but it was just a
list of
list.
incidents
Right, like
with
Yeah.
addresses. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So
I don't understand all the abbreviations, but I can decipher the serious stuff and the incidental stuff, and that's about it.
Yeah, it's usually something
this
just input.
document breaks it all down quite nicely with
Yeah.
specific.
Could we in the future maybe get a translation to help us read these better? Like what is this TP and XFER and
Well, maybe we could hold that in-house at some point. I think Ted is pretty up on that, so
Yeah.
he could probably just
be able
run
to
us through it.
that?
And that would save,
Right.
us waiting for a sheriff's deputy to come and so on.
And tell you
So-
what.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's not do it now, it's getting late.
Yeah, it is.
Let's maybe either incorporate, let's have a special meeting for that specific purpose, but we'll do it early some night, okay?
Mhm.
Yeah, and you can probably take this list here and correlate it with with the map, this first page map here.
Okay.
As it lists breaks
Oh,
out
right.
all of those categories that are
Mhm.
here. Yeah, exactly. That's the type, call type, that's the same thing as here. And so you can probably, a little self-education use this as a key to understand what those abbreviations are. And some are pretty, straightforward traffic, TRF traffic,
Yeah.
assist,
Vandalism, those things.
vandalism, a PC,
Mhm.
that's usually a violation of some kind. And then, transfer vehicle, and you'll see it all
Right.
kind of unfold right here.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, because we're going to discuss the Humboldt County Sheriff under item. Well, it should be 9. It looks like we have 2 8s here or something. Uh-oh, we have to renumber here. All right, so we basically just accept it, look over it. If there's any questions about it specifically, we bring those up, but that's about all we do with item 7. Item 8 is what I got into, and I apologize for that. I jumped ahead, talking about the museum corner safety. And as you pointed out, Mandy, that is part of the Greenwood truck route project, which will go all the way up to Hatchery Road. And is there anything you wanted to add to that discussion?
Well, I think we did talk about some easy fixes would be to address the landscaping on the corner. Those bushes really do impede being able to see, people coming on the trail. So it would be nice to look at cutting those down or removing them or cutting them back or something. I think it's kind of, that landscaping's getting pretty large.
Yeah.
And, it really does create a physical sight barrier to be able to see at the stop sign anyone coming, especially the kids. Because the kids aren't, we know that kids don't always stop at stop signs. And so it's having more visibility, I think, is really important.
Yeah, our last museum, we have our museum board of directors meetings on the last Monday of the month. And the next one is on Memorial Day, so I'm not sure we'll have it on that. We might have it the following Monday or something. But anyway, I will bring that up. The tree had some significance because it was planted for Jean Levitt,
Yeah.
and unfortunately it died.
Yeah.
So then the bush, so we removed the tree and then the bushes took over. But they have no historical significance in terms of being planted there for a particular person or anyone. So I don't think it will be a problem. I think they were waiting for them to bloom and then they were going to chop them way down. Yeah, I think that was the thought because they had some pretty blooms on them, I think, in springtime. So anyway, I'll bring that up at the, because I'm on the board of directors of the museum. We can talk about that more then. Okay, agency program check-in, Humboldt County Sheriff. So we're moving ahead with our contract with the sheriff, as I understand, and that'll be all set up for the fiscal year. And I think the amount you quoted is 20,000 less than the 190, so it's at 170,000 a year. And we're still, that'll be for this year, and we're still looking possibly into coordinating with other cities, but probably not for this year as far as the coverage goes. There has been some discussion with changing, yeah, and maybe connecting with Trinidad and Ferndale, but then that issue was because Ferndale is so far away. And now Arcata may be more open to talking with us about things. So, you know, there's some ideas coming forward, but at least for now, we probably will sign with the sheriff at the $170,000. Was there anything else you wanted to add to that? No. Okay. Blue Lake Fire. I think the issue there we talked about at the last meeting was that we now have 4 fire persons living at the fire hall because they cannot find a place to live in town, which kind of goes back to the idea of getting our low-income housing project going, because that would certainly help us not only keep these 4 here, but attract more fire people to Blue Lake. So it's even more important, I think, that we
School
get
would
that.
also get more people, more
Oh, yeah.
kids.
Yeah.
Very
So, but I'm just talking about as far as the fire issue, I think the message I would send to the city council is to move forward with that housing project soon as possible so we can get
Related to
more.
the fire department?
Well, yeah, because our fire department needs people. One of the reasons they can't get people is because no one can live in Blue Lake because there's no housing.
There's some residences also, planned residences in the fire hall also, right?
We already have some residents in the fire
Yeah,
hall,
there's
but
4
they're,
people living
you know,
there, but
like
that's
little
really,
sardines in there.
yeah, that's really not.
Is designed for 1 or 2 people?
2.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, it's something to, I think, to think about in terms of.
Yeah, and spread the word. We
helping.
need volunteers. Wildland season's almost here, so we'll be losing a good majority of our volunteers. So we'll be down to a skeleton crew. So if anyone wants to be a volunteer
that's a safety
firefighter,
issue.
send them our way.
That is a public safety.
Oh, yeah, it's a
Absolutely.
very big public safety issue. And then again, you know, it does go back, it does coordinate with the fact that there just is not enough housing in Blue Lake, and it's a need. It's a serious, serious need. You can't attract people here and then say, well, good luck in living here. Anything else you wanted to talk about with the fire department?
I don't think so. Like I said, we're wildland season.
Yeah.
You know, we've got a lot of growth. We were on a wildland fire today, just out of Corbell, and it was probably just like an accidental. Someone threw a cigarette out, not thinking it would take, and it took. And you know, so there's a lot of fuels around. So.
Yeah, that stuff, Scotch broom is really pretty, that yellow stuff. But up in Trinity Village, where we have some property, they're taking out all the Scotch broom. I'm sad on the one hand because I like the pretty yellow flowers, but on the other hand, I understand the need, and that I notice there's a lot of that growing along the highways. So it's something to think about. Yeah.
I would like to add to this item, if I can.
Okay.
So it says agency and program check-in, and I saw on past minutes that there was some discussion about the CERT team and also about pods in Blue Lake and about Neighborhood Watch. So I'm involved with two of those programs because I'm a co-coordinator of our local pod, and I'm also a member of the CERT team. And I just wanted to let people know, because I don't think everyone is aware of what exists in Blue Lake right now. And we put together this a few years ago. It's a listing of Blue Lake Public Safety volunteer groups, and it describes what pods are, what they do, describes the CERT team and what we do, and then also Neighborhood Watch, which I'm not as familiar with. I was just reading online today that somehow Neighborhood Watch is affiliated with Nextdoor. Is that correct, Mandy?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It's kind of the online version of Neighborhood Watch is next door.
So I don't know if that's something.
Yeah, we got the
Yeah,
information last meeting.
Okay.
Mandy
Yeah.
gave us some
Oh, did she? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I also.
handouts on that.
And if you want any more information, I have information. And then in terms of pods, I think there was some discussion about expanding pods in Blue Lake, which I think is a really good idea. And the pods have been talking about that a lot recently. And there was a meeting, I think I brought that up at public comment at the city council meeting, that there was a meeting for two of the pods that are getting kind of restarting, and then there's a new pod that's looking to form. So the existing pods, there are 3 existing pods right now, are talking about how best to support neighborhood groups in starting a pod. So there are going to be some meetings coming up in the next few months. There's going to be an all pod kind of a fun event happening. And
Oh, okay. Do you have a date for that yet?
I do not.
Okay, let us know.
Yeah, if you could collect that information
Mhm.
and we run copies of it, and we have that here when people come,
Right.
we could hand them copies of that right then and there. And that may help consolidate, move things along,
Right.
for those organizations and so on. So would you be willing to do that?
Well, the pod leaders are talking about doing something just like that. It hasn't been done yet. Putting together a packet of some kind that we could present to someone who had interest in doing a pod in the neighborhood, and would give them some sample forms.
Would be great.
Yeah, but that's something that's in the works right now. When
Okay.
that happens, I think that would be good to.
We get it from them.
Yeah.
And that would be okay.
Yeah.
Well, I know Dot Campbell was really involved in the pod,
She's the mother of the
the
pods.
mother of the pods of
Yes.
Blue Lake anyway. And is she the one that's getting this group together that's going to be
She's
expanding
part
pods?
of it.
Okay.
Yeah, she
Okay.
is, but she's working with other people like Team Stock and other folks who are.
Oh, okay, good.
I think the more information we have about public safety, now, hard copy, but then hard copies still mean more. You give somebody a hard copy and they're more likely to look at it and it pops up on the screen. So if you would take care of that, that would be great.
I would let you know, and then that brings up one more thing. I know we're kind of running late, but we have a hard copy of a list of emergency services in Blue Lake called Be Prepared for Emergencies in Blue Lake. And this is something that the previous Public Safety Commission worked with the CERT team on, but it was several years ago and it needs to be updated.
Great.
So our plan was to put this together and then distribute it throughout the town. And each CERT team member would talk to their neighbors about it. And then the pandemic hit.
Oh, okay, okay.
So we kind of got way late.
Yeah, I know. I was trying to think because I remember that rolling along and that's what ended up happening because we couldn't go door to door to talk to people,
Exactly.
pass that information out. Do you think this is fairly current or?
That's the thing we're updating.
You're
this right
updating
now,
it.
so I just
Okay.
wanted to let the Public Safety Commission know
Yeah.
because this is a Public Safety Commission document.
Yeah,
too.
that's
That's happening.
Yeah, that's really important. I mean, we could have CERT as even, one of our issues to, program check-in.
Yeah.
It'd be CERT as well, especially now that you're on the commission.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
I think it's
Yeah,
really good.
good.
Okay, I think there's nothing there and we are getting late, so I renumbered things. So item 10, reports from PSC liaison and staff. Did you have anything report from the staff or the council? Okay, we pretty much are keeping up.
But we do have a public safety page on the website. And there's actually a neighborhood watch thing here, so
Yeah, we
we're not
have some of
gonna-
those. Yeah.
we're not gonna support a neighborhood watch program, but we were doing the pods, then we should have some information here about the pod program.
Okay.
And we can change that. There's a cert button here. I don't know if that goes anywhere, but a little description of what cert's about. So if there's more supporting documentation and you wanna, have that available on the website, you can provide that and, in electronic form and we can upload it and link these.
Probably
things
when
up.
she has it updated, that would be something. to
Yeah,
get there.
I have two documents. This is the emergencies in Blue Lake, be prepared. And this is also a listing of what the CERT team is and what pods are
Mhm.
and something on neighborhood watch. But there's a lot of information. I can give it to you. You can tell me if that's appropriate. It
Sure.
needs to be more succinct.
And basically, you can decide what you want to publish, because we wouldn't put that whole document right here. We'd say learn more, click this button and it would open up to whatever you thought was appropriate.
Okay.
Okay.
You have electronic versions of
I do.
that.
Oh,
Yeah, we could just, we just get them, email them to Council Person Scafani.
Yeah.
And then she can
Right, the commission
take it to the web people.
Approve them now.
yeah,
Yeah.
well, we're gonna update this anyway, weren't you?
This is going to be updated. And
Yeah,
then
but this isn't. This will be the same.
Right.
Okay.
I forget
Great,
copies.
great, 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 great.
Approval.
Okay, so future agenda items, I have that we would like the engineer to come to the next meeting if it's possible, so that he can give us an update on the local road safety plan. Maybe answer some questions if some of the same folks are here or are watching this on the video from Justin. Any other future agenda items? Probably have to carry over some of these items.
Probably if we want to review the draft survey.
Yes, please.
That would be good.
And
Yeah,
put that on the agenda.
good.
Should be
Draft
able to
survey.
Put that together fairly quickly. And
Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah.
It's just gonna be, what do you want?
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
this,
basically,
A, B, C, D, E, F.
right. Well, we heard a lot of
Just add in,
suggestions.
you
So
know,
you can
and
add
I'm gonna
the-
get
you
with
put
Lori
those-
to go over some of this stuff. And I'm gonna look at the city's, traffic safety plan and see what's in there and what's recommended and add that.
Mhm.
Little menu for people.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, that's great.
We don't imply that we're going to do whatever they say, but just like.
Well, I know.
This is a
Make no
survey.
promises.
Well, a
If we get
survey.
15% response.
Let's be a little more optimistic about that, Alex. It might
I
be
think-
something.
I'll try.
I think
We
the
had
community,
15% of the people here tonight.
I
so
think
we
the
might get
community is
more.
very much interested in what goes on.
I think they
It's
are.
what's gonna go on with that street. And so I think
Yeah.
probably gonna have a little bit more than 50%
Yeah.
of participation in the survey if we do it right.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. Thank you for agreeing to do that. Any other future agenda items?
Any more on item 5?
Item 5.
Power plants.
Oh, yeah, that would probably be carried over. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I think we are at a motion to adjourn. We need a first and a second for that.
All right, second.
Oh, I'm not motioning it. One of you guys do it.
I'll motion it. to
Thank
adjourn.
you, Commissioner Chang.
Okay.
Yes. Seconded by Ted Hales. Any further discussion from commission? Anyone from public? Back to commission. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.